how do you view cloud culture, Jonathan, as a process that you may be bringing into an existing legacy organization that already has a lot of cultural capital put together, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's where I start on this. We are the sum of what we know to this point in time, right? And whether we like it or not, those experiences have shaped us how we're going to act. And in enterprises and organizations, how you act is largely how you've been programmed. And that is largely the culture that you've been absorbed into and the culture that you either explicitly or implicitly have adopted over time. So that's kind of like the first premise that you're going in. And typically, I find culture is absolutely set from the top down. What they absolutely, walk the talk on is incredibly important. I'm also conscious, though, Forrest, that I'm going to hand the ball to Thomas here, because Thomas actually, I think, speaks far more eloquently than me. So, Thomas.
Well, that's nonsense. I don't speak more eloquently than you, but okay. So there are a couple of things about culture that I think really important. When you do a cloud transformation, and I think Jonathan and I, and really hundreds of people we've talked to, have shared this experience. It's not the technology that creates the problems when we do a transformation or the challenges. It's really the people and culture. And one of the things that we should be mindful is culture evolves whether we want to or not. It just happens. There's hidden rules. There's transparent rules. And so we actually have a choice to create the culture we want, cultivate the culture we want. We find that very important. And that involves things like defining, we call them leadership principles, but defining the principles with which you operate. We talk about tenets. Tenets are shorthand decisions where you were agreed up front what you're going to do. And Jonathan has a great list of tenets that he's squirreled away somewhere. And it's really about bringing everyone along for the journey of this cultural transformation. It's about ways of working. It's about how we interact with each other. And so, if you haven't looked at them before, take a look at the 14 leadership principles that really encapsulate how Amazon thinks about culture. We find it very useful when we talk to our customers because there are things there you can just take and use where it makes sense.
And if I can just build on what Thomas was saying about tenets there, let's give you, an example from some of the things we talk about in the book here. So one of the big things when I talk to leadership teams and engineers and developers, and I felt the same as a customer, is I don't know what I don't know at the start of the journey. I know what I know right now and I know how to operate. And I think there's something good over here, but I don't know. And what I'll immediately start doing, though, in that process is putting in the way blockers and constraints. And we all do it by human nature. So here's a tenet for you, right? All of your assumed constraints are debatable. And I talk to leadership teams about this. And the moment I say that, they're like, they are. And they get out of their swim lane. So suddenly when we talk about cultural norms and what's acceptable for them, that just gets them out their swim lane. And then there's a couple of other tenets, we talk about them in the book, that leadership teams have to consider. Okay, we've got to keep the customer, employees, and company safe on this journey that we're about to go on. That's mandatory, right? We're not going to fight gravity, though. The world is changing when we look at these constants. And to give you a bit of a mental model on this, Forrest, when you look over the human history, right, there have been inflection points over thousands of years, right? Let's quickly go through a couple super fast. In the Bronze Age, the bronze chisel actually gave us the ability to defeat friction by creating the wheel and the axle. Fast forward through the industrial age, we know them. Fast forward through the information age, we know them. And actually, academics talk about these as general purpose technologies. And when you look at the digital age that we're going through, arguably there's many, but let's just talk about a few, right? Public ISPs in 1995, APIs in 2000, eBay, actually the first to publish a public API. Arguably, we would say in 2006, AWS launching public cloud as a GPT, along with IoT, machine learning, and who knows what else is going to be as a GPT. What's happening is these are coming faster and faster. So when we talk about culture, especially to leadership teams and engineers and developers, as engineers and developers, we've always seen these inflection points come through in time. And they are happening faster, right? So your culture has got to be responsive on how it's going to adapt, how it's going to survive, and then more importantly, how it's going to thrive with the absorption of these new general purpose technologies into its culture, how it's going to adopt, and how it's going to thrive. And I'm a firm believer that everybody has a huge part to play in that journey.
I love that. I think what's the saying? If you don't like change, you're really going to hate irrelevancy, right? And that's an interesting thing to bring into that cloud conversation. And I think it's so interesting that that you start there with getting people out of the comfort zone, right, rather than trying to graft cloud onto the existing context.